Welcome to Sports Lab Overtime. Dropping a little special edition for you. Recording this ahead of time before Saturday's game against Mississippi State. We'll be dropping it here in the next little bit. Just wanted to hop on. We've had a pretty crazy week. I think this is a good opportunity to get back in here, talk a little bit more Gator football, and really get to some of the stuff that has been maybe front of mind for you this week. I've really enjoyed getting the chance to hang out in the YouTube comment section with you, start to build this community a little bit. The next era of Florida Gator football seems to be upon us, at least if you go by the reporting we've gotten this week. Because of that, it's going to be potentially an exciting time. There's going to be a lot of things to talk about. There certainly won't be a lack of things. I promise you that. But I think it's good to go ahead and build that community up and have folks that we can talk good, just good, clean college football about. Got a few of the people in there that are maybe there to poke and prod, but for the most part, I think we've got a great group, and we're going to continue to grow that. We appreciate you being part of the WRUF family, joining us every day of the week to hear from Steve Russell, from Kevin Winter, from some of the folks, the up-and-coming voices of sports broadcast. I mean, this is one of the best universities in the country. The program, the students, you see them on Sports Lab every day. This isn't just some fly-by-night program. These kids are top-notch. I call them kids, but, I mean, they're only a few years younger than me. But they're going to be the voice of the next generation of football or sports in general. And so get to know the names. Get to know the Nate Bilgerays, the Rob Rousseaus, the Hannah Getmans, the Lauren McGills, the Hannah Macks, the Michael Tubbs, the A.J. Sheridans. Get to know those names now. Luis Rodriguez. Get to know the names now because they're the future of this business, and they're the future of what you'll be seeing on your TV or listening to your radio over the next 20-some-odd years. They're going to be the ones you listen to. And, of course, Jeff and Pat on Tailgate, the Ryan Tice Show with Tom Collette and head coach Ryan Tice of the volleyball team, and Gator Talk with the voice of the Gators, Sean Kelly, as he brings in Billy Napier every week. Don't know what that looks like if the news and all that's true. That Billy will be out regardless of the outcome of the game against Mississippi State. If that's true, somebody will be on there with Sean Kelly, I'm sure. And then he'll get him with Todd Golden and such as well throughout the season. But I wanted to get to the big question that I saw in the comments on the video I did a couple days ago. And it was the one we were talking about, who's next if Billy Napier is out. And we talked a lot about the expectations. We talked a lot about the expectations of what you have for the next coach. And the pool one is shortening. Kirk Signetti got a massive, massive contract from Indiana on Thursday, I believe it was. So the pool is going to shorten some, and look, the pool will open up a bit because there will be more folks that inevitably become either more of a hot commodity as the season progresses. More folks like James Franklin last week. Nobody ever saw that coming. You'll get to hear from him on College Game Day. So we say all that to say that the question I got, though, was an interesting one. It's one I've really sat down and I've pondered it for the last day or so because I really wanted to get back in here and talk about it. And the question was, the problem is, how do you know who is the right guy? Suppose we hire Lane Kiffin and he doesn't make the playoff in the first 4 years. We won't have the benefit of hindsight. That's true. I mean, that's spot on from Gary. Here's what I'll say. What my point has been the whole time is you need to set your expectations, and if it's the college football playoffs, set the expectation early and then hire the guy you think is most likely to meet those expectations. Now, you assume that that's what everybody goes into these situations doing. You assume every AD is going into it with the expectation of, this is the guy that I think is most likely to meet those expectations. You have to make sure that you trust. I guess from a better way of looking at it is, you want to create a low margin of error when it comes to this next head coaching hire, because as I'm going to continue to pound this drum, I think it's the most important hire in the school's history for the head coaching job here at the University of Florida. The reality of the situation is you cannot afford to miss on another head coach. It just doesn't feel like like you don't want to go through 4 or 5 more years of 7-6, 5-7, 20 and 21 and 24, whatever it is now. You don't want to go through that again. Granted, I'm sure when he was hired, nobody thought Billy Napier would be going through this as a 7-5 coach. But I will say, I think that the margin for error was always a little, or the margin for the potential for it was a little bit higher. You took a bigger swing in terms of a guy who was coming from a group of 5 school, who hadn't coached in the SEC before as a head coach, who hadn't been in a group of, or a Power 4, Power 5 at the time job. So you were taking a little bit more of a swing. I don't know that you can do that now. Like, I think we've seen some of the names that folks, I mean, I can go down the list of, we had some comments of Lane, Freeman, Lanning, Signetti was on there at the time, Matt Campbell, Cliff Kingsbury, folks like that. Those are all relatively big names. Eli Drinkwitz. Those are all pretty big names, I would say. Joe Brady is another one that I see on the list here. But you almost have to cut out some of those, and some of the ones that are, for some jobs, are going to be potentially looked at. The Glenn Schumans, the defensive coordinator at Georgia. I think it's Will Stein at Oregon, offensive coordinator there. Let me just double check that real quick. Yeah, Oregon's offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, Don. Those kind of names, the Cliff Kingsbury's, again, he's the offensive coordinator for the Washington Redskins, Commanders. That's a hard habit to break. You've called him that your whole childhood. But Joe Brady, another one. Again, he hasn't gotten a shot before as a head coach. Again, really bright young guy. And he's the offensive coordinator there for the Buffalo Bills. He was the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, I believe, of Matt Rule. He was the passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach for that really great LSU team. He's got even some connection to Penn State with being a grad assistant there. But anyway, those are all guys you start looking at and you're like, we got to start crossing some of these guys off. Todd Golish is one I see coming up quite a bit. Another one I probably cross off. I don't know that I know it sounds kind of ridiculous if you think the right guy is a group of 5 guy again. You still go hire him maybe, and somebody would say, well, like if you got your heart broken asking somebody to prom, you wouldn't stop asking. You go ask again. You wouldn't not take a girl on a date because she looks kind of like the one before that broke your heart or whatever. You would still go out and do it. But again, I think because of how important this hire is, I think we're looking at a different situation. Um, I think you've got to narrow it down to 4 or 5 names, maybe 6. I think with Cignetti off the board, he becomes one that you obviously is no longer an option. But I think, one, you call Dan Lanning. Make him say no. He will, but make him say no. The other thing with Curt Cignetti, too, is that he got like an $11 million a year. He maybe just set the new bar for what Florida's going to have to pony up, too, and probably a little bit more. So look in that 12 to 13, 14 range now in terms of per year salary. So keep that in mind, too. And probably what Lane Kiffin will get from somebody, whether it be Ole Miss, Florida, or whatever. That's probably Lane's new salary, too, is somewhere in that neighborhood. But I would think Lane Kiffin, let's go relatively realistic. Lane Kiffin, Marcus Freeman, Eli Drinkwitz, Brent Key. Is Brent Key the other one? Seen some talk about that. The Georgia Tech head coach. Look, you say what you want about the guy. He's got Georgia Tech as a top 15 team in the country. Another thing about Brent Key, too, he hates Georgia. I think that guy would go 1-11 if it meant beating Georgia. And, if you're a Florida coach right now, you haven't beat him in a while. You haven't beat him since Dan Mullen, if I'm not mistaken. Having a guy that hates Georgia, that's going to go out and recruit heavy to beat him, has been recruiting in their state, and doing so with some pretty stringent restrictions on academics. Brent Key's a fun name. I think Brent Key probably strikes more fear into the heart of Georgia fans than people realize in terms of if he were to take on the Florida job. Probably more so than almost any coach on the list, because they've seen what he's been able to do at Georgia Tech. Wonder what he could do with wonder what he could do where he wasn't having to worry about the level of academic restraints that Georgia Tech applies, in my opinion. Not saying, Florida's a great school academically. I'm not saying that, but Georgia Tech engineering school, they've got some pretty strict things when it comes to even their football players. Those are the 4. I think there's probably a 5th or 6th that you could throw in there. James Franklin to me is in that discussion. I think Franklin's probably the 5th name I would put in that list, that short list, of so to speak. Those are the 5 in my opinion. But it goes back to that question that we got yesterday or a couple days ago, that that you're hiring the right guy. Well, you don't. You really don't. You're right, you don't have the hindsight factor. But of those 5 names, which one leads you, and you have to decide this. This is not me, not you as a fan, as you're watching this, have to decide what are your expectations. And then you have to start looking at each of those guys and what they bring to the table, and which one has the best chance of meeting your expectations. Look, things go awry, things happen. You may end up in a situation where that guy doesn't meet the expectations for whatever reason. College football is a crazy place. We saw that this year. We've seen it already. We saw a UCLA team getting beat by pretty close to, I guess, FCS level teams. Go out and beat a top 10 team at the time in Penn State, and James Franklin lost his job. So, college football is a crazy place. If I were a Gator fan, what would my expectations be? That's another question you got to think about. For me, I think my expectation would be, and maybe it's a list. Maybe it's a list of things that I would want to see within the first 4 to 5 years. I talked about this the other day. Like if it's a college football video game, you get 4 or 5 objectives that you're supposed to meet within that time frame. And I think the 4 or 5 that I would lay out is within the first 4 years, I'd want to see 2 10-win seasons. I think 2 10-win seasons is doable. I think that especially with the schedule for the first 2 years of that, it's harder to gauge multiple years out in terms of what teams will be and what they won't be. But I think in the first 4 years, I think the first 2 years are pretty gettable. I think within the first 4 years, I'd want to see 2 10-win teams. I'd want to see 1 SEC championship appearance, at least one. And normally, look, if you get one of the 2 10-win seasons, or probably both of them, may put you up in Atlanta. But I think 2 10-win seasons, an SEC championship appearance, a playoff appearance. Is playoff win going a little too far? It depends on what the team looks like. I don't know that a playoff win's unrealistic. So I'd throw a playoff win in there too. So make at least 1 college football playoff. Make at least 1 SEC championship. Have at least 2 10-win seasons. And win one college football playoff game. I think those are realistic expectations for the next head coach of the Florida Gators. And look, if they don't meet those expectations, it's not going to be a complete failure as long as you get close to some of that stuff. I mean, if it's 1 10-win season, it's 1 college football playoff, it's 1 college football playoff win, you don't make it SEC championship, I don't know that anybody's going to be super upset about it. But I think within the first 4 years, you're going to have your guys by year 4, at least. You'll have had a full recruiting class, or recruiting cycle, I should say. That would be the baseline, I should say. That's the baseline. Disaster scenario is probably a string of 8 wins with no playoff appearances, obviously no playoff wins, and no SEC championship. I think you can't settle for being in the middle anymore. This program has to get back to the top of the SEC. Oh, I'll also throw in some recruiting objectives. So let's just say we want at least 2 to 3 top 5 to 10 classes. Or if it's going to be an outside the top 10, you have hit the portal really, really hard. That's, the portal is the great equalizer, so to speak, when you're coming from that. But I do think that I think those are all, I think, realistic expectations. It's 3 top 10 recruiting classes, I think, or really good portal classes that kind of fill it out. And I guess to some degree, those the class rankings don't matter as much because of the portal, because you can have the 14th or 15th best class in the country, or you can even have the number 1 class in the country, and if half of them leave after year 1, it doesn't really matter. So I guess it's more of a roster rating, so to speak, of composite talent. But you want to be in the top 10 in that, I think. Top 15. I think they're in the top 15 now. I think you got to maintain that talent level. But then I would also say that you just have to cut down on the clock management stuff, the play calling stuff. You just want to see clean games. You don't want to see a product that you're not proud of on the field. And there have been times this season, South Florida is going to be the one we look back at and really look at and say, yep, that's the one. You didn't feel proud of what you saw out there. I mean, you're proud of the players for fighting. You think, it's a great team, a great talent. But it wasn't a proud moment losing to South Florida. Especially when you watched how much the fans got into that game. I said it, I think, yesterday. That third quarter, that was magical stuff. That was magical stuff coming out of the third quarter into the fourth. But like I said, I just wanted to hop on, get a couple things out there as we move into the potential for what's next. If Billy Napier really is gone, if the result on the field against Mississippi State doesn't matter, and win or lose on Sunday or Monday, Florida's new search for a new head coach is truly underway. Yeah, I think the wish lists are fun. And I think I saw something too that there was somebody on there that said, it may have been on Twitter, that if Lane or Marcus Freeman, or if they both say no, that we're in a panic state. That's hyperbole. It just is. I think Lane and Marcus should be the top two on your list for the most part. I think those are the two that everybody is pretty set on. But it's not a disaster if you end up with Brent Key. It's not a disaster if you end up with James Franklin. I don't live in the extremes of, well, if this happens and that's the worst thing. No, we're not doing that. I think there are folks out there that very much live in those areas, and that's fine. Sometimes those tend to be the more vocal ones too. You see that on Twitter. Is that they're the more vocal ones. They're the ones, pushing, this crazy stuff out there that somehow if you don't end up with one of your top one or two choices, that the failure, the whole thing's a failure, and the next coach is going to be terrible. No, it's not. The right guy will be in charge of the Florida Gators. I believe that. I think they're going to land the right guy. And maybe that's cautious optimism on my part. Maybe I'm too optimistic when it comes to this program. I haven't been around it long. I'm also more of a unbiased observer, so to speak. Because I didn't grow up a Florida fan. Never have been a Florida fan. So I'm able to kind of take my heart out of these things and really try to take a bigger picture view, so to speak, and look for that kind of stuff. And in my opinion, I think that Florida is a really good job still. I think that there are a lot of good. I think there's a lot of good here. And again, maybe that's because I love working for this university. I love the atmosphere. I love being in the swamp. I love the fan base. I think the fan base is one of the best in the country. Again, I grew up on the other side of this. I think everybody knows that by now. I'm a Georgia guy, born and raised in the state of Georgia. I experienced a lot of losing to Florida growing up. I told Tim Tebow the other day, we were talking when he came into town for SEC Nation. I said, "You ruined my childhood." He thought that was the funniest thing. He gave me a big hug and said he was happy to see me as part of Gator Nation now. We'll work on that part. But my point is I've seen this program at its highs, watching from below. I've also now seen it from the other side of things, where my team made it to the mountaintop, and now we're at one of the lower points that you'll see the Florida Gator football program in terms of win-loss record over the last few years. And so, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask on this, and you can certainly let me know that in the comments. But I do think that I'm able to take a little bit more of an unbiased view of things because I've seen it from both sides, and I know that there are names on this list that if I were an opposing, or at least on my list, I guess I should say, not the list. I'm not ignorant enough to think that Scott Strickland or these boosters or whatever are listening to Justin Baxley figure out that's how they're going to figure out their list. But I think that when you start looking at your list, my list, the list that ultimately will be So I don't know. I think there's 4 or 5 names that I think you should feel pretty good about if you're able to hire them into this program. I like Marcus Freeman a lot. This is probably the unpopular one. I like James Franklin a lot. I think he can build this program. I think if you ask me who of the group is most likely to get you the objectives that I laid out, the 10 wins, the 2 10-win seasons, playoff spot and a playoff win and an SEC championship appearance, I think James Franklin might be the number one person on that list. He's not the hot commodity that Lane Kiffin is, and I think Lane to me would be number 2 on my list. I think Marcus Freeman's probably 3, but James Franklin and Lane are 1 and 2 for me. And it really depends on the day you ask me. What I'll say about Lane, personality-wise, he fits this program. Gosh, does he fit the program. You want to talk about a guy that Steve Spurrier 2.0, that's Lane Kiffin. He's already he's good at ribbing Kirby Smart too. I like Lane a lot. Again, this is where I go back to. I think there's 3 or 4 names on these lists that I love if I'm a Florida fan. If I get any of the 4, I feel really good about where this program is going, 4 or 5. I really like James Franklin. I really like Lane Kiffin. I really like Marcus Freeman. And that 4th spot's more of a wild card spot for me. Eli Drinkwitz has done a really good job at Missouri. But I think I'd lean Brent Key as that 4th name on my list because I see what he's been able to do at Georgia Tech. I see what he's been able to do against rivals at Georgia Tech. I've also seen him be able to beat teams that he probably shouldn't have beat at Georgia Tech, and he finds gritty ways to win football games. Now, he is in my opinion, most risky of the 5 names. And so he may be the one that I would stay away from compared to the other 4, just because I think he comes with the most risk. But he may have the most upside outside of maybe Lane Kiffin. He may have the most upside. Because we don't know what he could do with the resources, recruiting bed, a little bit with the recruiting, but more so without some of those restrictions that I talked about earlier. He's the most exciting name on the list from a ceiling standpoint, but he's also the most likely to end you up in the same spot you're in now, in my opinion. It's a matter of, do you want to take that kind of swing a second time over again? Because here's the uncomfortable truth of it all. I know we talk about Billy a lot in terms of when he said we're five or six plays away from being dangerous. He wasn't wrong. Like, they really are 4 or 5 plays away from being 4-1, 3-2, somewhere in there. I don't think he's crazy in that regard, and I think so. When you look at it from that perspective, the problem is that the margin for error is so low. I think I mentioned earlier that I said you're looking for a coach with low margin of error. I meant more so that, like, I guess there's a high margin for it, a big margin that even if you were to fall flat on your face, you still get caught in a good place. With Billy, because the games are so close, if you have 1 or 2 plays go against you, you lose the football game. You need a coach that doesn't have a whole lot of those kind of games. Brent Key has a lot of those kind of games at Georgia Tech, but maybe he doesn't have that here. Drinkwitz is probably the least from a ceiling standpoint. I'd probably put him lowest, but I think he's got a great floor. Marcus Freeman, solid ceiling, solid floor. He feels like a great mix of both, along with James Franklin, ceiling probably a little bit lower, but the floor is really, really high. And then Lane Kiffin's ceiling is unbelievably high with a pretty solid floor. If you take out the years before he went to the Saban Academy, and kind of got rebuilt in the Saban image, Lane has a pretty solid floor. So I think those are the names that I would start looking at as you get ready for this weekend, for the potential for this weekend. But really be tossing around that question of, you're not going to have the hindsight of it all, and you're really not going to know who the right guy is. But what you may have is the ability to lock in on 3 or 4 names that you trust could at least provide you a really good floor and a really good ceiling for this program. The ceiling with the recruiting and the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff now for most programs, I think we got this comment as well, was that it doesn't just have to be the blue bloods of these programs anymore. Yeah, it's a different world. Any program can win now. Allen posted this yesterday or something. You don't have to be a blue blood. Look at Indiana, Texas Tech, Arizona State. The longer you stay a bad program, the harder it is to get back to the top. That's the key there. The longer you stay a bad program, the harder it is to get back to the top. That's why this is the most important hire. If and when Coach Napier, his time ends, the next hire for the college for Florida Gator college football head coach is the most important in the history of the program. So we'll see. We'll see. It could be a very interesting weekend. I'll tell you now, WRUF will have you covered, regardless of what happens. We'll have your game coverage, Extra Point with Steve Russell. You'll have plenty of that to watch this weekend. Steve Russell, of course, on the Extra Point. Kevin Winter will have you for a few hours on Saturday as you listen to the game. Sean Kelly, Shane Matthews, Jeff Cardoza, the whole group has been doing a really great job. Again, we're trying to build this brand up, not only on the radio, but on YouTube. We appreciate you guys for helping make that a possibility. We could not do it without the fans of this station, the fans of Gator Nation, fans of Steve Russell, fans of Jeff Cardoza, and hopefully Kevin Winter and myself will be making a few fans along the way, as well as our wonderful students. I mean, really, I know I mentioned it earlier. Seriously, they're good. They're really good, and it's I think we're in good hands. Looking at what they're able to do at their age, I'm looking at it and going, gosh, what could I mean, could I have even made it into the business going against some of these folks? Probably not. They're good. So seriously, watch them as well. And then we'll be ready if anything happens over the weekend too. So stay tuned to WRUF. We'll have plenty of stuff for you. Excited for Mississippi State. Go out, watch the game. Whether you're here on campus, whether you're around Gainesville, or you're just cheering from afar, I think this is going to be a really, really fun football game. Mississippi State's not a pushover. It's going to be a fun football game. Lauren McGill and I went over all of that yesterday. So be sure to check all that out as well. And we will catch you next time on Sports Lab Overtime. This has been a special edition with just Justin Baxley today. Wanted to get in here and really check out some of those YouTube comments and really start trying to build this community up. We want to see you. Make sure you like, subscribe, like all these videos. It's free. We appreciate you. Subscribe to us. It's free. We appreciate you. Seriously, it makes a big difference. It helps the YouTube space treat us a little bit more serious, and we get a little bit more folks to watch us, and we can continue to do some of this really great content. And we have a lot of special stuff planned for you in the future. Kevin and I are working really closely together to make this YouTube experience one that we can be proud of and you can be proud of. And we're just excited to be a part of this, and excited for some Gator football. So for WRUF, from Sports Lab over, I'm Justin Baxley, and I'll see you soon.